the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. My name is Brian Wallace, and I am the MS Michigan Man 64. The MS Michigan Man 64 podcast is about chronic disease awareness. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. It's an invisible chronic disease that I've been battling for half of my life. I want to share with you what it is like living with the chronic disease from my experiences and the experiences of other chronic disease warriors. We can fight to have a voice to those that want to listen. Together, we can motivate and educate. Hi, welcome back to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast, where I am trying to spread awareness about what it is like living with a chronic disease. I have had multiple sclerosis for the last 27 years. I talk about my journey, and I also talk about with other chronic disease warriors from all over the world, just so people understand. Please hit the subscribe button on the podcast and give it a like. And I want to welcome my guest today. I met Mel online on social media, on TikTok. We were in a live together, and I just loved everything that she was about. She was diagnosed with her MS in 2022, and she wanted to come on and share her journey with me. How are you doing today, Mel?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about the things I've experienced, and hopefully that might help somebody else that's going through it. I started my MS journey in 2019 with an official label in 2022, and I had my second relapse this year in 2025. So, yeah, I'm here. Happy to be here.
I appreciate you, Mel. Like I said, I mean, everything that I've learned about you just in the conversations we've had the last couple of days. You're just a fighter, you know. I mean, I know you're 36 now, and you were 32 when you were officially diagnosed, and you got kids, and you've been through a lot, and you just want to come on and share just to help other people, just to understand this disease a little bit better. And I really appreciate you for that. Can you kind of take us through your journey of your official diagnosis in 22? I know you were experiencing a lot of symptoms earlier in life and then you officially got diagnosed in 22, but can you just kind of take us through your path so we can learn more about you, Mel?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to tell people my experience so maybe they can relate or get something out of it. 2019 is when I started experience what I guess were actually neurological symptoms, but I didn't correlate it to that because I didn't know what the heck was going on with me. But my doctor thought that that needed to be seen by a neurologist. So that's where my journey started. I got the official multiple sclerosis label on my paperwork in August 2022, and then in 2025 is when I had my last relapse. So I guess what would be my second documented.
I mean, when you were going through all this, I know that you were 32 when you got your actual diagnosis. You're 36 now. And I remember in our conversations yesterday that you were saying that you were going through a lot of symptoms a lot earlier in life, even into your teenage years, that, you were going to doctors and they were telling you got migraines. They weren't really ever really running an MRI on you to check for anything. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was rough. My childhood, a lot of it, I guess it was easier for medical professionals to label things as, just mental health related, anxiety, things like that. And not really listening to what I was saying, and so doing the tests that they should have done. Eventually I got moved up to higher medications like triptans, like sumatriptan, that's for like migraine disorders, but nothing really got resolved, and I also had issues with what would now they think could possibly have been fatigue since I was a child, but there was also doctors that thought it was narcolepsy. So,
And you
you
had
know,
and you had doctors just telling you that, it was all in your head, and I mean, I've heard that story so many times, and you're living proof of it again. I mean, you were told that growing up and even into your young adult.
yeah, it's medical gaslighting, and it happens. a lot, and actually more than people know because they don't even understand exactly what gaslighting is, and it's happening to people that are not even aware of it,
Yeah.
you know?
So so you're going through all this. I mean, what actually sent you to the doctor that actually got your diagnosis in 2022, and why did they actually like put you in an MRI machine and actually run an MRI of your brain and your spine and came up with that diagnosis of MS?
Well, a lot of weird tests came before the MRI, actually. I don't know why they didn't do an MRI first, but other things came where like they tested the electrical shock things for carpal tunnel and stuff like that to try and
Yeah,
see
yeah,
if that was like I guess nerves, like seeing if my nerves were causing, but that's what it was. It was what mimics not mimics it was drop foot, you know.
right.
I was drop foot brought me there. I was tripping on stuff, I didn't understand it, and my hands were shaking so bad I didn't understand. So that's what escalated it to neurology, and the testing began. I probably started in 2019. I'd probably say, actually, I know for a fact that it was after COVID because I had to wear a fucking mask inside the MRI machine with a cage over my face, you know. So yeah, that it was COVID time frame when I got my first MRI, and many MRIs followed after.
Man, I hear that story so many times. Just since I started doing this podcast, how people their symptoms either lay dormant or they were missed by doctors, and then during the COVID years, that's when their symptoms really spiked, and then they got their MRI, and I just hear so many people get diagnosed in that COVID period, and you're just another one of those I guess call it a statistic, but I hear it so often, Mel.
Yeah, COVID affected things in a lot of ways. Like, I was actually a neurologist not to get vaccine. I was already on the fence about the vaccine to begin with, because it's not tested. I didn't want to be a guinea pig, so. But yeah, that affected a lot, and I don't know if maybe that affected my access to, like, an MRI. Maybe they just weren't giving MRIs in that time frame because of all the COVID and the shorting of staff and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Who knows why they took so long, but
yeah.
yeah.
So they ended up running an MRI, and they found the lesions on you, and then you had a doctor came in, and he said, we were pretty sure you got MS, and they wanted to do a spinal tap.
The spinal tap came first. So I had
Okay.
the MRI. I had 14 lesions in my brain and in the white matter of my brain. He said they were markers for MS, but in order to get that determination, there were multiple tests that would have to follow. And one of them was the spinal tap, along with a whole bunch of different types of blood work. And I did all of that. His hesitation and his reasoning for continuing to do more testing after all of that other testing was done was that I didn't have lesions on my spine. So he said that he was a little bit weary because he was not a specialist and he was not very familiar with multiple sclerosis, even though he was a neurologist. He was weary to jump to that route and just wanted to continue checking for other things, making sure it's not lupus, things of that nature.
Yeah, rolling everything else out. But in the meantime, you're still suffering with your symptoms, and you're still the one that like doesn't have an answer. And I know that's got to be a game, like a mind game on you. You're young with young kids in the house, and you're trying to work, and you're trying to figure everything out. And you got doctors that that for whatever reason they take their time on their official diagnosis and treatment of it, and you're not getting better. You're not getting salumedrol to boost the inflammation up or anything like that. I just can't imagine the mental part of it that you were going through, Mo.
Yeah, it was psychologically a clusterfuck. I don't know how else to word it any better,
It's a good way
but
to put it.
it just was, there's so many emotions that you process with being told that you potentially have a neurological disease, a neurological disease that does not have a cure
No.
and is not fully understood. Um
Yeah.
so that scary in and of itself, and then the fact that I didn't know about salumedrol at that time. I didn't know about that until way later in life, and I didn't know to ask, I didn't know to inquire, and I wish, honestly, it would have been given to me regardless of figuring out what was going on because it could have helped,
You
but
know,
what
and I hear that too, Mel. I've done podcasts with people, and I tell them my path. That was the first drug that was given to me was the Salumedrol to get the inflammation down, and I got my DMT. A few months after that, and Salumedrol's been my best friend. Anytime I've ever had an episode, and I hear MSers all the time, they're like, "I never even heard of Salumedrol until I was like 3, 4 years into my journey," and I'm like, I don't understand that. Just depending on what part of the world you're from or what area or how much money you have. But I don't know. I don't know why everybody's not treated the same way. But it's crazy that you didn't know what a Salumedrol was.
nope, I absolutely had no idea.
So let me ask you this, Mel. After you get this diagnosis, how did you process it? How did you learn, that this disease is chronic, and it's going to be with me the rest of my life? I got to figure this out. I got a kid at home. I got to be there for my kids. I got to be there for myself. How did you like process the disease and just try to figure it out?
Well, I think it's important for it to be noted that I have obsessive compulsive disorder, so I have a tendency to fixate on things. So I put boundaries in place. I should have probably researched more, but I fixated on primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and it scared the hell out of me. And I didn't allow myself to go down the rabbit hole of other horrible things that I could see or witness. So I had very limited information and no history of knowing anything about multiple sclerosis at all, even though I have a family member. So it's what I should have done more research. I was scared. There's a lot of fear. There's fear that comes with that.
And I can relate to that, Mel. I was 27 years old when I got diagnosed. I was just, getting done playing at football at Michigan, graduated for college, and I was just getting started with life. And when I got that diagnosis and that doctor told me I had MS and I didn't even really know what it was. And when I wrapped my head around it, I'm like, holy shit, this is with me for the rest of my life. It's a scary thing. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. When you're told that and you finally figure it out that this thing's not going to go away, there's not a cure. You might feel better, but it's never gonna go completely away. It's a scary, scary thing. I totally understand what you're talking about, Mel.
It is. It sits with you. It's not something that you can just turn off. It's always there in your mind. It's very complex to wrap your mind around, so that itself is very difficult. It's honestly, I really feel like when somebody's given any type of diagnosis like that, they should have therapy.
I agree with you 1000%. I've said that a couple of times with people I've recorded. I'll probably say it 1,000 more times. Um, One of the first things I think that should be done when you get diagnosed is a referral should immediately be put in for a mental health evaluation. Even though you might not think you're depressed, because I don't care who you are, this disease is a depressing disease. You're going to be isolated. There's going to be times where you're not going to feel good, and it's going to beat you down. And the sooner that you get that help, I think the better. And it should be provided at the diagnosis. I agree with you 1000% on that, Mel.
Oh, excuse my language, but fuck the referral. I think that it should be done completely differently. I think that if anyone is getting a serious lifelong medical diagnosis, that the appointment that they have to sit in front of the doctor, there should already be a therapist sitting in that office too.
Well,
And that's where it starts.
I love that.
That's
I think that's even better. I mean, the doctors need to be educated on this. And I don't think doctors are ignorant. I don't think that they're stupid. They're intelligent people, but sometimes they don't have the bedside manner. And I know that I've been told some crazy stories of how people are even told that they have this disease. A doctor just comes in and say, "Oh yeah, everything came back. By the way, you have MS," and walk out. I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I think that a mental health professional should probably be scheduled at the time of the appointment that you're getting the diagnosis, just so that you have somebody to talk to, because this disease is a scary disease for anybody, male, female, where you're at in the world. This is a scary disease. I don't care who you are.
Well, that's what happened to me, Brian. That's exactly what happened to me. I had had so many tests already. Keep in mind, it was 2019 to 2022. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of tests and a lot of visits. And the visit that I walked into, where he told me that it was MS, or that he believed it was MS, I was not prepared for that. I thought it was just going to be another bullshit appointment where he was going to tell me, okay, we got to do this other test. And when I got to my car, and I can honestly tell you, I don't remember a goddamn thing he said other than it's likely MS. That's literally all I retained. That's all I retained because as soon as that came out of his mouth, I don't know if I disassociated or what the hell happened,
Mhm.
but the only thing it was that eventually I was sitting in front of my steering wheel going, "What the fuck?" You know?
I know that feeling, Mel. I mean, when I was 27 and I was scared to death. And I thought my life was over. I'm like, I'm 27 years old. I'm engaged to be married, and I'm being told that I got something going on that's never gonna go away. And I was scared to death. And the mental part of this journey is to me the toughest part. And the sooner that you can, you know, be aware that this is the toughest part and you get the help that you get, whatever help that is, whether it is counseling or whether it is, getting a community like we did on TikTok, just so that you have somebody to talk to, that can relate, that understands this disease, because this disease is lonely, it's scary, and you need to reach out.
Yeah, honestly, I came across the TikTok community by accident. I wasn't into that type of thing, but I think I can confidently say if I wouldn't have found that support system that I've found through like-minded souls that have been on the same journey as me, I can't promise you that I would be here right now.
I Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Mel. I've been on it for about a year and a half. When I started on TikTok, I had just lost my ability to be to work, to have employment. I lost my job because of this disease. And I was in a dark spot, and my daughter actually told me about TikTok, and I was an old guy, 55, 54 years old, and I'm like sitting there going, I ain't doing that shit. I was scared of it, but when I did finally do it, and I found that community, and now I got 1,700 followers, and most of them all have chronic disease, and I've met people like you, I've met people like the Swab over in the UK, and I've met people like Debbie in Colorado, and just to have that common bond with people that understand. I mean, it is a huge mental health tool that I use, and I know that you use, and it's just important. And I would encourage anybody, find a community.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal finding the community. That was hard for me to accept because I was kind of a recluse my entire life. But without having that community, and I'll try to say it without crying, these people have not only helped me mentally but physically in a way that I couldn't get the help from doctors, but they've walked that same path. They couldn't either, and they knew a hack or a trick to maybe help you go to the bathroom
Yeah.
or things like that. Something that got me out of pain um, from not being able to, my body to work the way it's supposed to, but I don't have coverage to get it fixed. These people they guided me, they helped me in a way that other society just can't, or they can and they don't want to, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for you. I'm grateful for Debbie. I'm grateful for all of them, really. They're amazing people,
They,
but it's
they
also
are.
heartbreaking. I didn't realize as somebody that worked in the healthcare field, I thought I knew. I thought I knew. I saw gaps, I saw holes, I saw suffering. I thought I knew. You don't know, man. Nobody knows. I'm more than elbow deep in the chronic illness and the MS community now in TikTok. And although I love what TikTok does for me, I have such an empathetic heart that I'm here to tell you it is very painful and very hard for me to read everybody's stories, to interact with people sometimes. because it hurts to watch other people hurt, and you know exactly that same pain,
What
you
they're
know?
going yeah, what they're going through. Yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday. One of the first people that followed me, um, real early, so when I started doing the TikTok was a girl that was only 22 years old, and she was just getting told she had MS, and she was scared, and she reached out, and I reached out to her, just to let her know that she was gonna be okay. I was 27 when I got diagnosed, and I let her know, "You're young, and you're in great shape, and you're athletic, and you're a fighter, and fast forward a year and a half later, and that girl's doing so awesome, that makes me feel good, that my experience, my 27 years of dealing with this disease actually helped somebody, just newly diagnosed, to wrap their head around it, and that's the great thing about the TikTok community that I love.
Yeah, me too. It's something that I've questioned walking away from because the internet can be a scary place, you know. Just because there's an MS and a chronic illness community on TikTok doesn't mean there's a door that closes to keep out the people that are cruel, you know.
Right.
So I've there's been moments I've questioned like stepping away, but I get more from being a part of it than I do from not. So I push through, the weirdos that send you,
Yeah,
nasty.
you're gonna have that anywhere. Social media is social media. You just,
Yeah.
there's ignorant people everywhere in the world. Those are the people you just put a block on, and you don't deal with. We support our people, and we're just trying to get people to understand us, because that's what we want to be. We want to be understood. And that kind of leads me to my next question with you, Mel. Is it's the your kids. I know that you were diagnosed when you already had kids. How do your kids understand the disease? I got two kids. One's 23, one's 26. And they neither one of them knew me when I was healthy. They've only known me with MS. But even my kids now, living with my disease and knowing about it, they're completely different. I mean, my daughter understands it a lot. I think she's more empathetic with it. My son, I think he understands that I have it, but he doesn't really like talking about it. And it's just I was just curious. How did your kids understand the disease, and how do they understand it now?
My God, I'm an adult with a fully developed brain, and I have a hard time understanding it. So I don't expect much from a child,
Yeah.
but I'd be lying if I said I didn't expect more than what I'm getting out of that. My kids are 16, 13, and 12. Boy, girl, boy. And my boys are mama boys. They really are. And they're more compassionate, they're understanding, and they're willing to sit and listen to me talk about it. I never said anything until 2025. If I maybe here and there I might have made a comment around my kids like, "Leave me alone, I have brain lesions," or something like that, but I never like I wasn't very accepting of it, so I didn't sit down and have a conversation like, "Hey, this is what's going on with your mom." But
Yeah.
in this year I had to. This year I had to. And unfortunately, due to the financial strain of, jumping through hoops and not getting your benefits and resources, my ex-husband, he's financially way off better than we are. And I fought very hard for custody of my daughter, and I've had it primary for the past 4 years. But after me getting sick, she said that not only was it affecting her mental health, but she didn't want to watch her mom get sick, and she didn't want to be living somewhere where, if her iPad breaks, it can't get replaced, or, maybe there's not Oreos and stuff in the house because that's a luxury,
Yeah.
but she's seeing her other siblings with my ex-husband have those things, and there's a jealousy that comes with that as a child. As a mother, it's my responsibility to be understanding, um, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a human feeling that feels like you didn't pick me. You saw that I was sick and you looked the other way, and that hurts.
Mel, I can't even imagine that. I went through a divorce when my kids were young. They were like 9 and 12, and the mental part, just like watching your kids, after me and their mom got divorced, and you had so many things flying through your head. They're not gonna love me anymore because you go through the divorce, and or now you're getting your chronic disease is getting worse, and things just go through your head, and it is a hard thing, and people don't understand that. They don't understand that that's part of this game that we're playing, that we have to battle the mind games of, if whether it's dealing with our kids or dealing with a spouse or dealing with a partner. There's so many mental struggles with this disease, and I just feel for you that you're going through this. And I'm hopefully when your kids get older, they learn more and they understand it more, and they're with you, and they're always going to be your kids. Nothing's ever going to change that.
Yeah, it's rough. It's just, when you're a parent, and you'll know this, you know when your kid's making a choice and you know what the consequence will be. With my condition and specifically what's going on with the last lesion that I got, the aggressive one, there are some kind of, more bleak things than some other MSers, sometimes, and, I feel the pain that my daughter's gonna feel the one day when she sits down and realizes I could have had conversations with my mom, maybe when she could talk or she was still alive, or I could have made memories with my mom, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. Like I know that there's going to come a day where she's going to sit back and reflect on her choice and regret it, and it's going to cause her deep pain. And I
Yeah.
feel that pain, even though it hasn't happened yet. I feel that pain. And that's something that's hard. It's hard to wrap your mind around.
It is, and like I'm going to go back to my kids. I mean, I know my son loves me, but he's got his own way of showing it, an own way of dealing with my disease, and I understand that, I got to accept that, but it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for us mentally. That those are the things that people just don't understand that we're dealing with. Not only this disease, not only with the way we feel, but it's just the mental things that we have to go through.
Yeah, those are complex things for just a regular adult human being to work around. Being accepting that another person might not be capable of expressing something in the same way that you are or that you thought it should have been. So that's kind of what it comes down to. I could see in their faces when I talk to them about what's going on with me and the dangers of what my future could potentially be or could potentially not be. And I've got children that had a lip and a chin quiver. They're trying not to cry.
Right.
It's hitting them their heart. And then I have another child that had a very clear facial expression of, "Are we done yet? So I can go back to my video game."
Yeah.
You know, and that's rough. It's rough as a parent.
It is,
It's rough.
yeah. I mean, but we gotta let them be kids too. I mean, because they're trying to process it too, and we gotta let them process it. But it's a definite mind game, that we go
And they
through.
just nailed that on the head because as a parent, ultimately, my God, you just want your kids to be kids and not have to be stressed or worried about their parent or anything like that, to just have fun and not struggle, to be able to be a teenager that doesn't give a shit and that be okay because they're just a teenager and that's what teenagers do.
Right.
But you throw a major illness in with it and everything becomes so much more complicated, and there's so many things that happen with multiple sclerosis and other diseases that affect more than your body. They do irreparable damage to things outside of your life, finances, social relationships,
Oh yeah.
family, all of it, and some of it's irreparable.
I say this all the time, Mel. From the date of your first MRI, you are behind a financial eight ball, with this disease. When I got diagnosed, I was just starting out my career with the state of Ohio. I had 2 years in, and I actually had dreams of leaving the state of Ohio and doing other things. But when I got that disease, it was like I was handcuffed. Okay, you got hospitalization. It's good hospitalization. You don't know how long you're going to be able to work. You got to ride it out. I mean, all these things are going through your head. Those are the mind games that we're playing. We got to do the best things for us. And then when that runs out, and we lose that ability to work, all those finances are gone. You're behind a financial eight ball from the date of your diagnosis, the date of your first MRI. it's a financial struggle for most people.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is like a joke to me, honestly. A lot of times it feels like just like a circle jerk between like different companies and doctors, a game that's played. But what really I find ironic is and almost every single MS person is told this, don't be stressed. Stress will be worse. Stress will make you more sick. And then they send you out the door and it's nothing but
What?
stress, hoops to jump through, fighting for the care, for basic needs, for coverage, for nothing. There's no time to heal. There's no time to be not stressed. Like, what?
No.
It's a joke.
Yeah, exactly, Mel. And these are the things that I'm hoping that people are listening and they're just they're hopefully understanding. You got a family member that's going through this. These are real life struggles, and I just want to make people aware of this. And we're talking about the kids and the family and understanding and all that. And you mentioned something about relationships. Talk a little bit about that because I mean, and I've been through a divorce, and I'm not going to blame it on my MS, but I know MS was involved in it. And she was with me for 15, 17 years of the MS, and she went through a lot of episodes. So I'm not saying that it was the deciding factor on the divorce, but I'm sure it had a little bit of play. Relationships are tough. How have relationships been for you with this disease?
I'll tell you, as soon as I accepted my diagnosis this year and I tried to find MS communities and stuff before I even found the one through TikTok, all I kept hearing was about people being divorced after they were diagnosed, people being left after they were diagnosed. And I looked at my own relationship and said, "Oh God, like this is not good. I'm not even married to this man, I'm only in a regular relationship." I thought there would be more compassion and empathy from my ex-husband. We're amicable. We don't fight. It's nothing like that. But I thought it would be different because his mother was chronically ill and died young and got diagnosed when he was the same age as our daughter is. So he's literally walked in her shoes, and his mom fought really, really hard. And the same way I am. I thought there would be some understanding. There wasn't. But then my also relationship is impacted as well because I don't have the caregiver I should have. My significant other has picked up the responsibility of doing what a medical professional should be, making sure I'm taking my medication on time, helping me wash my body or get me clean and things of that nature. And when you're in a relationship and the partner takes on a caregiver role, there is and they call it like caregiver burnout is what they call it. That happens in real life and in your job. It's real bad if that happens in your relationship. That's why your significant other should only be taking care of you in the gaps of when you have coverage. So that's something I'm dealing with right now, trying to make sure my partner doesn't become like that. He's already overwhelmed with everything he's had to take on, financially and medically for me. But
That
there's other parts that act our relationship too, like intimacy. Now, intimacy has to be approached differently, and people don't talk about that.
yeah.
And it's a little comfortable, and I can understand that. But unfortunately, intimacy is important, at least from what I've experienced through life. Intimacy is important in a relationship. And it's not just me that has to wrap my mind around uh, being able to find enjoyment in a body that's literally trying to kill me.
Yeah.
But my partner has to wrap their mind around too, adapting to something different. And I don't know how you feel, but I'm sure when you were 36 years old as a man, or even if you could imagine being 36 years old as a man who does not have a chronic illness, you probably didn't want to pre-plan out sex. That was probably not appealing. I can understand that, but unfortunately, if we ever want to, fix that bridge and make that functional, we both have to be able to wrap our minds around approaching it differently.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not the only couple out here in the world that's dealing with that same struggle.
Oh no, no, Mel. And you're right. It's not talked about enough. And the intimacy part is very important. I mean, it's just a important part of life, or just any kind of relationship. And I hear it all the time, a lot, very frequent that, after a chronic disease, people are treated like they're broke or like they're fragile, by their spouse or by their partner. And they're treated differently, or they're treated like they're broke. But you got to figure it out. I mean, you still want that human touch. Everybody does. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to still do it. But you got to figure out how to do it. You got to figure out you still, and hopefully have a partner that'll figure it out with you. When you don't, I mean, that's a strain on the relationship. That's a mental health. I mean, everything about this disease is just a lot of like figuring out and understanding and having somebody that is willing to learn with you. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
That's actually, like, a really great thing that you touched base on there because that's another thing that a bridge that we have to cross. We did cross it, so that's great for us, but not everybody has been able to do that. It's important to keep in mind the size difference here. I'm a 5'3" little girl, and he's this big guy who's 6'4" muscly. Absolutely, when I came home from the hospital, I was treated like glass. And he expressed, "I'm afraid to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to hurt you." And obviously that came from a good place in his heart, but it also made me feel broken. It made me feel like yeah, it just wasn't a good situation, and we had to have a talk. We had to have a talk like, "Hey, this is still my body. I still can tell you when to stop and when something hurts or when something's not okay. But as a human, I need connection. Like I need connection. I need that deeper, intimacy. So we gotta find a way to work around this. And if that means that we had to approach it in a way that maybe that wasn't our typical way to go about it before, we might just have to see if maybe that's still okay and maybe that can open the door for us to get back to the way things used to be. And they did. You know, they did. I would say that he was able to overcome his fear of hurting me after I could prove what I said I could do. I can tell you if it's not okay. I can tell you if it hurts, blah, 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 things of that nature. So now, like, we are okay. We're back to the way that we used to be, except for the timeline of it, because we still haven't been able to adapt to the fact that, I can't just jump and do things on demand. I do have to pre-plan those kind of things, and
Yeah.
we're only 36. We are a young couple, it's an adjustment. It's an
It,
adjustment.
it's a hard adjustment. I mean, like you said, a 36-year-old guy, he wants to be able to give his wife a kiss, and the next thing you know, 2 seconds later, everybody's clothes are off and you're in bed. But when you have MS, you can't fucking do that. I mean, sometimes it's a freaking process. But it's a part of the game that you got to figure out. You still want that human touch. And we still want to have a relationship where we can have pleasure and enjoyment. But you can't. You got to figure out how you can do it, and you got to have a spouse. Or
So
go ahead.
it's okay to be human and still want to feel good,
Yeah,
And I feel like when you get sick, sometimes people feel like they can't do that anymore. And when it's not talked about, um, and you don't have like a community of people you're comfortable with and you trust or something like that that can say, "Hey, we tried X, Y, and Z this way, and this actually helps," and maybe you wouldn't have thought about it. And instead of trying to get what you want, you end up accepting what you deemed yourself incapable of having, and that can suck. It's not just that part too, either, like the real bedroom intimacy. For me, my damage is right here in my C2 vertebrae.
hmm
So I'm 3, he's 6'4". I had to bend my neck back and go on my tippy toes to kiss this man. I cannot do that anymore. The pain that it causes me. So like even just expressing love in a sweet way, like, a kiss on the cheek or things like that. I can't do that. I can't even adapt to it by climbing on a chair, so I didn't have to bend my neck in a way that causes me severe pain.
Yeah.
That's not enough. for me, you know?
And
So
here's the thing, Mel. You got a spouse or a partner that is atypical. They don't have a chronic disease, and they get tired of that, and they don't want to do that, and they just walk out on people, and they're like, hey, I'm gonna go find somebody healthy, and that's another part of the game that we have to play is like people they just okay, they're in it in the beginning. They're in it like at the vows that till death do you part. But as soon as you have a little chronic disease and things start getting tough, and maybe sex isn't as good as it used to be or whatever reason, they're like, oh, you know what? I'm out. I'm out. And relationships are dismantled because of this disease. And that's why, I think that it is just so important to be as open with each other as you can. And I even recorded with Myra out in California, and she told me the beautiful story of how her and her husband, after diagnosis, they had group counseling. I mean, I thought that was freaking amazing. I'm like, Myra, man, that is just beautiful. I think people should do that all the time. You got a spouse, you get a diagnosis with a chronic disease, get into group counseling, man, so you both can learn how to deal with it.
for sure, I'm like so team for that. But unfortunately, there's a big stigma against mental health and therapy, even if it's group therapy. That's still a real thing in this time frame. And, even though it might be beneficial for their partner to do something like group therapy, there's people like me that's with somebody that thinks that therapists are a crock of shit. That stuff's
Exactly.
made up.
Yep, exactly. And like I said, you got to have a partner that's willing, that's why I said Myra. It was a beautiful story when she told me that, and I gave her husband a shout out because that is just that's a beautiful thing. I wish I would have had that early in my diagnosis. Group counseling probably would have helped my first marriage. I wish I would have had it with my wife now. I mean, I think group counseling could benefit our marriage, but I mean, people have to be willing on both sides of the fence to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, there's a big part of mental health stuff that comes with these types of diagnoses, and it's not just us. It's not just the person that got diagnosed. Like,
Mm,
for example, you got to think about dreams and the course of your life and how it changes. I'm in a committed relationship with someone. We've been together over 3 years. That's an investment of time, But they had dreams too, not just me. He wanted to have children of his own. That could have been possible. Honestly, it still could now with in vitro services and stuff like that. But now I'm the one that's no longer willing to explore that because I can't chase after a toddler. I can't jump up to go feed them at 3 a.m. when they're crying or they just pooped and they need to be changed. I can't do that.
yeah,
So not only did my dreams become squashed, but some of his did too. So then they're
exactly.
left with of I could find somebody else that could do this.
Yep,
And then you
exactly.
sit here and you sit here with the anxiety and the fear of when are they gonna walk away when they realize that it's a hell of a lot easier, a hell of a lot cheaper, and goals are a hell of a lot more achievable if you just walked away and went with somebody who wasn't like me, you
Mm,
know?
yeah, exactly. And yeah, they might feel bad for a few months or maybe a year, but they're going to forget about us, because they're going to live, they're going to go on with their life. And I totally get it. I mean, that's part of this stupid mental health part of this disease that I hate. And I just appreciate you, Mel. You're young in this journey, even though you've been dealing with these symptoms, and you're just so willing to come out and talk about anything. I mean, I just had a conversation with a female about sex and chronic disease, and I appreciate that because a lot of people they don't want to do that, and I love the fact that you'll talk about anything. You're like an open book with this disease, like I am, and I really appreciate you. Is there anything that you want to tell anybody else that is listening that is maybe in a similar situation as you? They're 30 something years old and they got a couple of young kids and they're new in this diagnosis. What would your message be to them just to keep on fighting?
Um, to be kind to yourself and to have patience with everyone else. Not everybody is going to show you what you needed to see. Not everybody's going to stick around even though you thought with all your might that they should have. It's just that's not going to happen. So ultimately, I would say just be kind and be patient and look for the community. Go on TikTok. Look for the orange hearts. Like, that's all you have to do. Look for usernames with an orange heart in it because we all make it very clear. We're your people, and we're here for you. If
Absolutely.
there's
And Mel,
an art,
if they want to follow you, if they want to follow you on TikTok or any of your other social media, how can they find you? I'll put it in the description. So if you want to connect with Mel, if something that she said, hits you that you're in a similar situation. I mean, she's an awesome lady. She is like an open book, and she'll definitely communicate with you if you want anything, any kind of help with from Mel.
yeah, I'm also, an artist and a writer, so my pen name is my username. It's a little complicated. My best advice would be, because I am an open book, you can always hit me up in my DMs, is to actually just follow Brian, Michigan. Brian, go to his TikTok. When he's on a live, I promise you're very likely to see me in that same live or down in the chat, or to just see a comment on one of his posts or something with my name. It's Mely Macabre, or Mely Macabre, depending on what country you're in. It's a little complicated, so just, look for Mely. You'll
Yep.
find us. You'll
Yep, absolutely. Like I said, I'll put it in the description so that if you want to find Mel, but I really appreciate you, Mel. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your journey with me. I would have you on anytime, just to keep on talking about our MS because you're an open book, I'm an open book, and I think we need to be an open book so people can understand this disease a little bit better.
Hell yeah. Whenever you need me, I'm available. I don't work now.
Hey, neither do I. Neither do I. I'm just having fun talking to chronic disease warriors like you. All right. If you want to follow me on TikTok, you can find me MS Michigan Man 64. You can also find me on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64, and I'm on Facebook, Brian Wallace out of Brunswick, Ohio. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button and share it out. We want to be understood. What better way to have people understand us than to hear us explain it? This is the MS Michigan Man 64. I am out.